I'd like to call the Gurnee Village Board regular meeting of April 15th, 2019 to order. Roll call, please, Andy.
Balmas.
Present.
Hood. Here. Thorstensen.
Here.
Jacobs. Ross.
Here.
Garner. 4 present, 2 absent.
All right, and Trustee Garner and Trustee Jacobs let us know they would not be here tonight. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, welcome. Our first order of business is approval of the consent agenda as presented.
So moved.
Motion by Trustee Balmas.
Second.
Second by Trustee Thorstensen. Discussion. All right, roll call, please, Andy.
Balmas.
Aye.
Hood.
Yes.
Thorstensen.
Yes.
Ross.
Aye.
4 aye.
All right, motion carries. Patrick, please read the consent agenda into the record.
Item number 1, approval of the minutes from the April 1st, 2019 Village Board meeting. Item number 2, approval of ordinance 2019-24, accepting the plat amendment to the Hunt Club Farms Unit 3 subdivision. Item number 3, approval of Engineering Division's recommendation to award the 2019 concrete sidewalk and curb replacement program to Schroeder & Schroeder at a cost not to exceed $100,000, joint bid consortium program. Item number 4, approval of payroll for period ending March 29, 2019 in the amount of $804,430.40. Item number 5, approval of bills for period ending April 15, 2019 in the amount of $1,491,072.79.
Thank you, Patrick. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda as read into the record? Motion by Trustee Balmas, second by Trustee Ross. No, this is a consent agenda, no.
No.
It's not public comment, no. Roll call, please, Andy.
Balmas.
Aye.
Hood.
Yes.
Thorstensen.
Yes.
Ross.
Aye.
4 aye.
All right, motion carries. We'll move on to our petitions and communications. First, we have a petition, or a presentation, because we are very excited and blessed to have with us the Glover family who were saved by the bell. And I believe our interim police chief, soon-to-be police chief,
Thank you.
Brian Smith, will be making the presentation.
Deputy Chief Gonzalez, Officer Gomez. Mr. Glover, if you could bring your family up. So we have a night of celebration here. Officer Gomez responded to an accident, crash, back in November of 2018 out in the area Hunt Club in 120. And the Glover family, they were struck by a drunk driver. That driver struck their vehicle at a high rate of speed. And both the adults in the vehicle were wearing their seatbelts, and all 3 children were properly placed in car seats. And the fact that they wore their seatbelts and were in car seats significantly contributed to the fact that there were not a real serious injury. And so we're here to celebrate tonight and thank you for wearing your seatbelts and taking care of your family. Again, we try to take an opportunity. Officer Gomez recognized the significance of the crash and the damage to your vehicle and the speed at which you were struck, and the fact that seatbelts save lives. And so thank you for being here. We have some certificates and some awards for you and your family. And on behalf of the Gurnee Police Department and the Village of Gurnee, thank you for wearing your seatbelts that night and taking care of your family. So thank you.
Good job. All right. Boy, are we glad you guys are here. All right, next we have approval of proclamation designating April 26th as Arbor Day in the Village of Gurnee. In 1872, J. Sterling Morton proposed to the Nebraska Board of Agriculture that a special date be set aside for the planting of trees, and this holiday, called Arbor Day, was first observed with the planting of more than 1 million trees in Nebraska. And 2019 is the 147th anniversary of the holiday, and Arbor Day is now observed throughout the nation and the world. And trees are an environmentally responsible way to reduce the erosion of topsoil by wind and water, cut heating and cooling costs, moderate the temperature, clean the air, produce oxygen, and provide habitat for wildlife. And trees are a renewable resource, giving us paper, wood for our homes, fuel for our fires, and countless other wood products. And trees in our village increase property values, enhance the economic vitality of business areas, and beautify our community. And the Village of Gurnee continues to receive recognition as a Tree City USA by the National Arbor Day Foundation. Now therefore I, Christina Kavarik, Mayor of Gurnee, do hereby proclaim April 26th, 2019 to be Arbor Day in the Village of Gurnee, and hereby urge all citizens to celebrate and support efforts to protect our trees and woodlands. Do I have a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Motion by Trustee Thorstensen,
So,
second by Trustee Balmas. All in favor say aye.
aye.
Opposed? All right, we've got Arbor Day to celebrate. That's it for petitions and communications. Move on to reports, and we have our Community Development Director, David, is going to walk us through the report that was done by Stormwater Management about the Foxconn development in that area and its impact to us. So I'll just let David take it away.
Thank you, Mayor and Village Board. Just wanted to run through a brief synopsis of the report that Christopher Burke presented to Lake County Stormwater Management Commission. It was originally commissioned back in July of 2018 to study the impacts of the state of Wisconsin and their electronics and information technology manufacturing zone that they implemented. So in 2017, the state of Wisconsin issued Act number 58, which created exemptions for the development of this area. They forewent the state environmental impact statement. They passed legislation for waivers on natural resources, wetland permitting, and then they also issued waivers for some of the permitting for stream activities. All total, the development area that it applies to is 4,088 acres. A good portion of that is within the Des Plaines River floodplain. An overview of the EITM zone and the Des Plaines River watershed. The site is about 3.3 square miles, 2,094 acres within the Des Plaines River watershed. The Kilbourne Road Ditch subwatershed is the tributary that goes into the Des Plaines River. And then you can kind of get an idea as to how much of the watershed is in Wisconsin and how much of the watershed is in Lake County of Illinois. Looking a little bit farther downstream, you know, the watersheds and water flow do not conform to political boundaries, of course, so it continues going through Lake County, through Cook County, through Will, through DuPage, and then on down to the Kaskaskia River, where we have an upstream area of 2,100 square miles, then goes on down to the Illinois River, and then eventually into the Mississippi River down by St. Louis. So zooming in a little bit, of the 2,094 acres in the EITM zone, about 1,500 of it is actually development area. There's another 148 acres that are impacted due to local road development, and another 420 acres that are impacted due to expansion and reconfiguration of I-94. So areas currently under construction, the Phase 1 area is 816 acres. About half of it is in the Des Plaines River watershed. The other half falls within the Lake Michigan watershed. So everything flows directly east to Lake Michigan. So we've got 421 acres. Of that, 148 acres is contributed to the local roadway improvements. 421 acres of the 395 acres of the development area, 148 acres of local roadway improvements, and then 420 acres of the I-94 improvements. So there are three main factors that contribute to the stormwater flow that's going to impact Gurnee. The first of which is a depressional storage area. So if you can imagine, everybody knows the river flows water. There's also pockets of depressional storage. That's anything that holds water on land areas that isn't directly contributed to a river. So there's a lot of it is in wetlands and other little pockets of drainage that hold water. So as part of the state of Wisconsin waivers, they were not required to compensate for any of the storage that is lost. So basically they can flatten everything out, put in storm sewers, drain everything directly to their detention basins and to the river. So if Lake County standards were applied, we'd have 59.9 acre feet of stormwater storage based upon our standards. And acre feet is a common unit of measurement for stormwater. If you can imagine a pool of water, 1 acre in area, 1 foot in depth. So that's 1 acre foot. So we've got just under 60 acre feet is going to be lost due to the depressional storage areas. The second area that is deficient in our minds is the stormwater detention sizing. So two main factors that go into sizing a stormwater detention basin is the rainfall amounts and then the size of the outlet. Lake County currently uses 6.5 inches for a 100-year rainstorm. The state of Wisconsin uses 5.8. Lake County is currently considering, based upon a new study by the University of Illinois, increasing our rainfall to 8.5 inches. So we're going 6.5 up to 8.5, while the state of Wisconsin is still just over 5.5 inches. So that's one aspect. The second aspect is how quickly you allow the detention basins to drain out. Our maximum outflow rate is 0.15 cubic feet per second per acre of developed area. Theirs is 0.3, so it allows it to drain out twice as fast as what we allow in Lake County. So when you add in the depressional storage volume that we've lost, plus the detention differences, that adds up to about 60 acre feet, so another 10 acre feet of, an additional 20 acre feet. So all total, we're now at 80 acre feet of deficiency. The third aspect of relief that they were granted beyond what our ordinance would allow is for floodplain fill and not requiring compensatory storage. The state of Wisconsin only requires compensatory storage on rivers if it's in a flood storage district. The portion of the Des Plaines River that they are impacting is not considered a flood storage district. Therefore, they are allowed to fill, tighten the floodway, tighten the floodplain, and without any compensatory action. In Lake County, for every cubic foot of soil that you put in the floodplain, you have to take out a cubic foot and a half somewhere else in the general vicinity. So that's the compensatory storage factor. So all total, we're looking at about 91 acre feet of stormwater storage that they are deficient. Now they are providing stormwater detention based upon their standards, and a couple slides back. So you can see they're providing about 125 acre feet of stormwater storage. If they were in Lake County, following the same rules as us, it'd be 182 plus the other 10, so just shy of 200 acre feet of storage. So what does that mean for Gurnee? So what does 9.91 acre feet of stormwater, undetained stormwater storage mean? And it's difficult to model but I'll give you kind of a seat of the pants thought process. So if those 91 acre feet of stormwater were to be introduced directly into the river, and that water came downstream immediately, as we would expect because it's not being detained or retained, and then we average that 91 acre feet over the course of a day. So it would equate to about 2 inches of increased height in the floodwaters in Gurnee. So there's a lot of assumptions built into that, but that gives you kind of a scope and scale of what we're looking at based upon the phase 1 development. Not a huge issue, 2 inches. However, when looking at the overall projected development, phase 1 is about 543 acres. Phase 1 and 2, with all the roads and everything, is about 1,700 acres. So we're looking at a magnitude of 4 times where we are right now. So that 2 inches becomes 6 to 8 inches. So now we're starting to talk about a fairly significant amount of stormwater. Christopher Burke also identified about 5,000 acres of potentially developed lands up and down the I-94 corridor in relative close proximity to Foxconn development. If all that were to develop in the same manner, then we're looking at a factor of 10. So that 2 inches becomes 20 inches, and that becomes very significant. So some of the recommendations that Christopher Burke and Stormwater Management identified is, the first one is complete a full hydraulic and hydrologic restudy of the Des Plaines River shed using cooperating agencies. We believe that the Des Plaines River should be made a flood storage district so that any fill in the floodplain is compensated for, that all depressional storage areas should be identified, quantified, and compensated for, and that all future development should have the same rainfall, use the same rainfall data and the 0.15 restrictive outfall for their detention basins to put them on a level playing field with us and minimize the impacts downstream. The last two recommendations that they had here are more of an environmental standards dealing with the wetlands that they are mitigating up there. They are required to mitigate the wetlands, however, they do not have to be in the Des Plaines River watershed. They can be anywhere in the state of Wisconsin. So the environmental, Lake County requires first that it be in the same watershed. If it cannot be in the same watershed, then it be in the same county, so it's general proximity. Wisconsin doesn't have that requirement. And then the other one is institute some water quality measures to increase the quality of the water, the clarity of the water as it flows off the site and further downstream. So that's the 10,000-foot overview of the report that Chris Burke put together for Lake County Stormwater Management. I'd be happy to try to answer any questions that you may have.
So I know the 2 inches isn't earth-shattering, but when you get to the 6 to 8 inches or the 20 inches, could we mitigate for that ourselves?
The 91 acre feet of stormwater storage, and I did not go in and, it's basically a detention basin similar to the size of what we see around Gurnee Mills. The 400 acres that they are developing right now is about the size of Gurnee Mills plus the Sam's Walmart complex. So imagine a development about that size, with the detention basin that we've got there. So we would have to be able to find, a similar sized location on the river somewhere that would be able to hold that volume of water. The wetland projects that are north of Gurnee between us and the state line are definitely helping. They have some storage involved in them, but we don't have anything that would be quite that quantity, especially once we get to the larger numbers. Several years ago, I remember SMC did a study, and I wanted to say that their evaluation showed that we needed about 600 acre feet of storage somewhere between us and the state line to be able to take care of a lot of the flood risks that we have here. So if we get to that with a full development up here, that 600 acre feet to mitigate flood risks in Gurnee is going to be 1,000 to 1,200 acre feet of storage that we're going to need to find and create and manage.
And this really didn't factor in the new rainfall totals either.
No.
You want to explain that just for a minute, just so the
Sure.
trustees understand?
So the rainfall totals, when the engineers designed the stormwater detention facilities, they use statistical models to try to determine what the critical duration storm is. And it's different for every size development and the mix of grassy areas to paved areas to rooftops. So there's a chart that we do that we utilize. The most common one, or one of the most common ones, is the 24-hour rainfall, and that's the rainfall that I identified. So right now we are under a study that I want to say was adopted in the late 90s, early 2000s, that shows, you know, the statistical rainfall for northeastern Illinois is a 100-year storm, or a 1% chance event in a 24-hour period is 6.5 inches. Now, we've experienced some recently that have exceeded that, and the statistical model that Wisconsin uses has experienced 3 rainfall events in the last 15 years that have exceeded their 100-year storm event. So it's outdated, it needs to be updated, and it's extremely conservative on the low side. Ours, at 6.5 inches, we've exceeded it, I think, just once, but looking at 50 years worth of rainfall data, the statistical interpretation shows that it needs to be increased. So they've come up with a new schedule. It was done by the University of Illinois, and it's just recently been published. So it's going to Lake County Stormwater Management. They're starting to look at it and discuss it and determine what the impacts are going to be for stormwater detention basins. So basically, you're looking at larger stormwater detention requirements for all new developments in the village.
I said a bigger boat, David said bigger pipes. But it shows that what we've seen is heavier rains more frequently has now been borne out by University of Illinois doing this research and saying statistically you need to start using bigger numbers. Other questions from the trustees? And this is going to impact us for years. Trustee Balmas?
So 2017 was our biggest one so far.
Correct.
Now. Translates 2 inches more water that we're talking about? I mean, we were at what, 12 point something?
We're like 12.04.
And so now we're talking 14 inches?
Not 14 feet, it'd be 12.2 instead of 12.0.
I mean, yeah, I'm sorry. It'd be what?
12.2 instead of 12.04.
Okay. So the part that everybody has been complaining about there on 41 between Dilly's and 41, where they took down all those trees,
Yes.
is that supposed to be now storage?
It is a wetland bank. It has some storage in it. It's not sold as a, you know, they have to keep the areas wet to qualify it as a wetland and to maintain the plant life that needs to be in there to be a wetland. It's not designed for storage, but it does have some storage, so it's not been quantified, and I can't tell you how much volume they've added in. And from recent experience, you know, there's been several wetland banks that have been developed north of us, between us and the state line.
Right.
They help shave off that peak, but they hold the water for a longer period of time. So where it used to, you know, bounce up quickly to 9, 10 feet, now it gets up to 8.5, 9 feet, and we sit at 9 feet for a long time. And we're kind of exposed, you know, it has shaved off that high peak, but we're kind of exposed for flash floods, locally heavy flooding that will bounce us up because it's holding all that water and draining out slowly, but that's kind of my interpretation of it.
Well, I can tell you it lasts longer each time.
Yeah.
Little personal experience.
Trustee Ross?
Now that there's a new governor in Wisconsin, do we have any indication that they're willing to listen to this kind of research?
I have not delved into the political side of things to see if this has any traction with the new governor or the new administration or their Department of Natural Resources. Stormwater management is kind of manning that pursuit with Wisconsin DNR and with the different entities up north. So I don't know.
Well, and one other thing, this one is based more on the Foxcom one, but there's been a lot of building in Pleasant Prairie, and it doesn't appear that there's a lot of retention there either, and a lot of those warehouses, and isn't that adding to our problem also?
Anytime there's development and you have more impervious surface, it creates more runoff. Now they do require stormwater detention, but it's just not as large of basins as what we require because of the rainfall data as well as the release rates. So those two in combination create significantly smaller stormwater detention facilities. So, but anytime there's pavement upstream of us, the bare earth is going to absorb the water, asphalt's not. So it's going to run off, it's going to come through us eventually. We hope that they hold it up there for a long enough time to let us drain out before it comes down here, but it is going to have an impact.
Trustee Thorstensen?
So I think I'm going to ask a question maybe that was somewhat similar to what Trustee Ross was saying. I think early on, 5-6 months ago, we were having some discussion about this. Who is the governing body that would be receptive to these recommendations? Because I believe we're in, it's not the Great Lakes one, I think I had heard in the past, and there's a regional one. So I guess I see these recommendations, and to hear the mayor say, is there anything we can do? But it looks like a lot of these recommendations are really approached to Wisconsin.
It's state of Wisconsin, it's U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, and
The Southeast Wisconsin Regional Planning Council.
and FEMA has a stake in it as well because they manage the floodplains. So there are some federal agencies that we can appeal to, as well as the Wisconsin state entities. However, a lot of the rulemaking is delegated down to the state level. FEMA and Corps of Engineers has some jurisdiction over some aspects of it, and everything that they've granted waivers on, everything they've done to size the stormwater facilities, those are all items that have been delegated down to the state. So those are under state control. But FEMA and Corps of Engineers would have some oversight onto those standards as well, I would assume.
And stormwater management's been very involved in that.
So I guess just a follow-up is, I'm not clear what is Mr. Burke asking of us when I see recommendations like this. Are there feasibilities?
Now, this was a presentation to the Lake County Stormwater Management Commission that I hijacked and tweaked to present to you. So these were recommendations to Lake County SMC as the next steps to take. And I think they're probably the most appropriate agency from Lake County to petition the state of Wisconsin and the federal government for, some further discussion on this.
Yeah, I had asked David, because it's a very large, complicated report. I asked David to summarize and give us his opinion on how it impacts us specifically, which is the 2 inches, 6 to 8, and not scientific, but, based on, some numbers. So Stormwater Management Commission, and I sit on that board, is kind of taking the lead in working with the different agencies and seeing, but there'd been a lot of reporting that, Wisconsin was, doing all this stuff, but they just have less restrictive stormwater management than Lake County does, which I think is very telling. And people say, well, Lake County is restrictive, one of the statistics we were given at a board meeting was in that 2017 flood, the really bad, the worst one in Lake County history, of all the hundreds of properties that took on water, less than a dozen, I think it was, had been built since the Lake County Watershed Development Ordinance had been put in place. So it proved that, yes, we are more restrictive, but over the last 25 years, anything built did not get impacted by the flooding. So the watershed development ordinances that we have in Lake County are working. It's mitigating and doing what it's supposed to do. Wisconsin is just not as restrictive as we are. And there is no intergovernmental agreement with Wisconsin. You know, like the Great Lakes Water Council, I think it is. There's an agreement of all the states to manage Lake Michigan. And we have intergovernmental agreements all the time, but there really isn't one between Illinois and Wisconsin to manage the Des Plaines River watershed, which crosses state boundaries. You know, now it's kind of hindsight that whenever you have a watershed that crosses state lines, it would be nice to work together so everybody's kind of planning together. I don't know if that could be done now, but that is one of the things, stormwater. But I wanted David to let you know what's the immediate impact on us as all of this is swirling around. 2 inches, I guess we could handle. The 6 to 8 worries me.
It's all incremental, you know, so we'd rather see it go down 2 inches than up 2 inches, obviously, but, you know, what the waivers that they've been granted at this point, you know, it's not fire and brimstone at this point, but it's something we should be concerned about, especially as it expands to their full build-out.
And it'll help us with our planning here too. So, and you know, our flood mitigation program that we continue to fund. So, any other questions for David? He can certainly make the full report available to you. All right. Thank you, David, very much. I know you put a lot of effort into this. And we will keep you posted. All right, that was all our reports tonight. Should I mention committee of the whole?
Yeah.
We have nothing planned for next week's committee of the whole meeting, so I
Make a motion to.
would entertain a motion. I have a motion from trustee Baumus, second from trustee Thorstensen to not hold our committee of the whole meeting this month. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, Jack will notice that for us. We have no other old business?
Correct.
All right, then I'm going to start with new business. The first item is approval of ordinance 2019-25, authorizing the Fifth Amendment to the agreement between the Northern Illinois Municipal Electric Collaborative and the Village of Gurnee for consulting services regarding an electricity aggregation program.
Sure. So I'm going to have Jack actually walk through this. This is our residential electric aggregation program that we've been conducting since 2012. It's up for renewal again. So we're looking to have NIMEC assist us, but we haven't talked about it in detail for a couple of years. So just for that sake, Jack's going to run through a couple quick slides to just refresh everyone's memory on the program.
Awesome. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Board. So just a little bit about the NIMEC program, just to kind of refresh everyone's memory and where we're at, how it was formed. So back in 2012, the question was put out to all Gurnee voters to support a referendum supporting an opt-out program. 62% of the voters did approve the referendum. So after that point, we went to a one-year contract with First Energy. The first time around of the program, that was when the big rate savings were seen. Our rate was almost half of what ComEd's was at the time. So it was a great program. That first year it saved people a lot of money. Since then, rates have gone up. They've gotten closer to ComEd's from competitive nature. But we were with First Energy for a couple years. We did 1 3-year contract with them. Halfway through that contract, or after year 2, ComEd's rate actually dropped below our contract rate. So at that point, we had an opt-out so that we could get the whole village out of the program. But instead, First Energy actually said, hey, we'll match your price. So they matched ComEd's price, so our rate was never higher than ComEd's at that point. We kept seeing good savings through this period. We went over to MC squared in 2017 with a 1-year contract, and then we renewed again last year for a 1-year contract. Now, for the first time in the 7-year history of the program, ComEd had an unexpected rate drop. And this was after we'd approved the contract, but now none of the bidders will do a opt-out, essentially. So the community cannot opt out itself. Once you're in a contract, you're in. So this was kind of our worst-case scenario. The good news is their rate is a fraction of a penny less than ours. So the difference between the two rates is, over the course of this whole period, NIMAC figured the average resident would pay a couple extra dollars on their electric bill. So it is not an ideal thing, so we've been advertising, we had it in the newsletter. If you are somebody that every dollar is extremely critical, we recommend taking the time opting out. It's very easy to do and then come right back in the next year. Now, for most people, it's such a minimal difference on their bill. I mean, you're talking maybe just pennies a month, so it's not as big of a deal. So for that's kind of where it's been at for the history. A little bit about NIMAC itself. So NIMAC negotiates on behalf of the village. They're our contractor. They provide us this information. They know what ComEd's rates are. They study the market. They've been very accurate at predicting ComEd's rates, but again, this was almost an unexpected rate settlement. Nobody saw this coming in the industry. None of the rates supported it. Everyone thought rates were going to be going up last year, but they went down. So a little bit about the program too, or about NIMAC. So we pay them essentially, or they get paid 0.000025 cents per kilowatt hour. And so the winning supplier actually pays NIMAC directly. So in the last 12 months, what their compensation or their rate was $14,000 from all village accounts. In return, again, we get good consulting. They manage the bids for us. They manage a lot of communication. They help us with a lot of support. The program in total, residents have saved $408 versus the ComEd rate. So this is one of those programs that saves money. Right now it's not, and it's unfortunate, but what we're looking forward is we're hoping to that this was a one-time issue. In total, $3.7 million for Gurnee residents compared to the ComEd rate, and we have a 77% participation rate. So most residents stay in the program. A little bit about the timeline. So tonight, if we renew NIMAC's contract, what we'll do after this is then they'll go out to bid. Bids will be due at May 6th at noon. At that point, what we'll do is on the agenda, we'll authorize the administrator to sign the bid. Because electricity is a commodity, it's only valid for 24 hours. So we have to basically act quickly, sign it that next day. We'll let the board know what the rates are that night. And then at that point, we get a mailer that comes from the winning bid firm. It comes from the mayor, but it's on our letterhead. But they actually do the mailing. They send it out. They pay for it. And then by default, residents are given the choice to opt in or opt out. For us, we're an opt-out community because of the referendum. So you're in the program unless you want to be out. So, and if you're out, you then can come back in too. And then July 1st, the new program goes live. And then the following electric bills will list the new rates or supplier on the bill. So some of ComEd's, they got some initial pricing. It looks like all rates are going down for next year. We're waiting right now for the new spring ComEd rates to come out. When those come out, they're usually, again, for the last 7 years, they've been very accurate in predicting what the ComEd rate will generally be for the year. ComEd doesn't bid like we do. We take a flat rate. It's the same all year long. There's no hidden fees in it. There's no penalties. ComEd's is a really nuanced rate. It's broken down into multiple parts. It's really difficult to determine what the rate is. But historically, again, NIMAC's been good at predicting it. Last year, it wasn't the case. So at this point, what we'll be able to do is at any time, if we get the rates back and we don't think it's competitive with ComEd's, on May 6th, we don't need to accept the contract. If we think it's not worth it, or if we're afraid of having another year like this year, we can back out. But there's essentially, at this point, if we renew NIMAC's contract, they're only compensated if we select a bid.
All right, questions for Jack?
Mayor,
Trustee Thorstensen?
the letter that they send our residents, how much are we able to participate in that since you receive the complaint calls that come in as a result of it?
Some of it we can, some of it's by state statute. So essentially they follow the state statute format of it's basically an a notification saying that the village has opted you in, this is part of our program, it was approved by referendum, here's the number to call to get out of it. The nice thing is with MC Squared, we've had pretty good customer service from them. They're a local office out of Chicago. Residents can call them directly. They don't call us to get out of it. So we do receive complaints or calls from residents, mainly confusion about it. Throughout the year, we get a lot of people who call, who get contacted by various companies. I can say I've had probably, I don't know, a lot over the years. Not a single one has ever had a rate from a third party lower than ours. So almost everybody who's signed a deal comes in, they show it to us, it's always higher. Sometimes we had one that was twice what our rate was. So these companies are predatory, and what we hope is part of this program is people, and it's part of what if we're gonna do it again, I'm gonna do kind of a campaign this year for social media, but almost I'm with the village program. Something to say if people call you, whatever, it gives residents a protection so that no matter what, they can trust that us and our consultants are getting them a lower rate than the private sector, these companies that come to them.
And then just one follow-up, quick, sorry. So I don't think that one modeling miss by, is it NIMIC or NIMIC? NIMIC?
NIMAC.
NIMIC? Seems substantial, but have you been in conversations with any other local community, and what's their confidence or input?
Yeah, well, I can say we're actually one of the few in the area that still have the program. So back a couple years ago, when the rate drop happened, and essentially back in 2016, ComEd became significantly lower than our rate, a lot of communities didn't have the option to have the price match. So at that point, a lot of them got out of the market. Their bids weren't coming in as low as ours. We kept getting some of the best rates of any of the municipalities, so we've been able to stay in it. And again, we've been able to do, for the last couple of years, the savings have been minimal. I mean, we're talking the same way that ours is a little bit more right now. It was a little bit less before. So the savings are there. They're minimal. They're not what they used to be when it was saving people. It cut people's electric bill in half near the beginning. So it's not there, but so yeah, we do see other communities that are out there abandoning the program, and it's something that we can decide once, especially when we see the rates and we know what ComEd's rate is. If our rate is looks dangerously close, we can make that decision.
Thank you.
There is a website, I think it was Plug-in Illinois, that has the ComEd rate on it, and then it also has a list of all the aggregation programs in the state of Illinois. I took a look at it earlier today. There was actually more programs still going than I expected there would be. Grays Lake bailed from their program, I think, in 2015 or 16. But communities like Libertyville still have an active aggregation program. So it's kind of a mix and match. I mean, like Jack said, they've tightened up. They're so tight now that I think some communities have just decided that it's not worth the staff time to manage the program and just bounce everybody back to ComEd and enjoy those savings that they had and not try to squeeze out any extra dollars for the residents. So.
If we were to do that, I mean, right now, ComEd's pretty aggressive on their pricing, but that could change next year, the year after, and so if we dropped it, would we be able to reinstitute it?
I think legally we would, because we still would have the referendum, but it would be resetting up the program essentially.
So there's some risk, now that you're at steady state, there'd be some risk to having to re-implement it.
Yeah, and I can look in, I'm not certain on if the municipality has done that, but.
Yeah, we can talk to NIMAC about that, reach out to them and see if they've had some communities that have taken a year or two off and tried to re-up the program again.
But if not as many communities are participating, then part of the bidding, you're not getting that volume pricing that we were in the beginning either, right? Because some of the advantage was there was so many communities in the one group.
So we actually just bid for Gurnee. So for the accounts and the bids that they receive is directly for our
Just
accounts.
us, okay.
So yeah, so we're all aggregated for our 17,000 accounts or so.
So tonight it's just a contract. Any other questions?
Move to approve.
Motion by trustee Ross. Second by trustee Balmas. Roll call, please, Andy.
Balmas.
Aye.
Hood.
Yes.
Thorstenson.
Yes.
Ross.
Aye.
4 aye.
All right, motion carries. Thanks, Jack. All right, item number 2, approval of ordinance 2019-26, authorizing the transfer of funds from the general fund to the capital improvement fund and water and sewer capital improvement fund.
Sure. You had a memo from our finance director, Brian Gosnell, on this. As you know, in the approved budget, we had some surplus left over from the 18-19 fiscal year. So we included a transfer of $1.3 million to the capital improvement fund to help support capital projects this summer, and then $200,000 to the water and sewer capital fund. So even after both of those transfers, we're still looking to have a $385,000 surplus in the general fund that'll go towards fund balance. So just to memorialize that and keep track of it, we approve an ordinance authorizing those transfers, so that's what is before you tonight for consideration.
Motion to approve?
Motion by trustee Thorstensen, second by trustee Ross. Roll call, please.
Balmas.
Aye.
Hood.
Yes.
Thorstensen.
Yes.
Ross.
Aye.
4 aye.
Motion carries. Item number 3, approval of ordinance 2019-27, approving an equipment loan with Gurnee Community Bank for a term of 36 months in the amount of $31,334.14. This is involving Bittersweet Golf Course.
Sure. We talked about this on December 17, 2018. So Bittersweet was looking to bring a new sprayer on board to replace a unit from 1991. They wanted to try to get it in as soon as possible. So once the spring season was here, they could start using it. They worked with PNC Bank to secure a lease to bring in that equipment. And we had mentioned at the time that after they secured that, we were going to work with Gurnee Community Bank, as we have in the past, to try to secure a more competitive rate. So Brian Gosnell has been doing that. He's been able to secure a 36-month term at 3.6% fixed versus PNC's 41 months at 5%. So we would enter into the contract with Gurnee Community Bank, pay off the PNC lease. Bittersweet has had a prior lease agreement that's expired, so that frees up that money. So this is just continuing to roll that, gets them the equipment they need. Back in December, we also talked about an additional piece of equipment. At this point, they're going to hold off on that and see how cash flow goes. The piece of equipment was less than $10,000. So if they get off to a strong start here, once the snow melts, they may reach out to us as far as purchasing that piece of equipment, but just use cash on hand. So this is just to replace, as I said, that PNC lease with a more competitive rate, and then partner with a local institution that we've had good luck with in the past. Bittersweet makes all the payments, but we own the equipment.
Questions?
Make a motion to approve.
Motion by trustee Balmas,
Second.
second by trustee Thorstensen. Roll call, please.
Balmas.
Aye.
Hood.
Yes.
Thorstensen.
Yes.
Ross.
Aye.
4 aye.
All right. Item number 4, approval of Engineering Division's recommendation to award the 2019 street resurfacing program to the low bidder Payne and Dolan at a cost of $3,476,672. Patrick?
So the approved budget included $3.7 million for street reconstruction and resurfacing. Went out to bid on it, received 3 bids back, ranging from $3.47 to $3.72 million. The program consists of 4.7 miles of resurfacing this year. Some of the major areas, portions of Data, Kingsport, Scarborough, Scranton, Queen Anne, Tri-State, South Dillies, and Wood Lake, as well as a bunch of different patching locations within the community. So when you look at the pavement condition index breakdown for the 2019 program for the roadways we're going to address, 17% are rated as failed, 55% is poor, and 28% is fair. So Payne and Dolan was a low bidder at $3.47 million. We've worked with them in the past. It's a solid company. So staff is recommending to execute a contract with them for this year's program.
David, can you check on Meadowlark? I thought we were going to do something with that.
Yeah, there's extensive patching, so there's going to be some.
So it's a different.
It'll be included with the resurfacing program. There's going to be some milling out there this year, and then extensive patching. It's going to be a 2-year program out there on those courts. So,
All right, but it
yep.
is covered. Okay. Questions from the trustees?
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
All right, motion from trustee Balmas, second from trustee Ross. Roll call, please. Andy?
Balmas.
Aye.
Hood.
Yes.
Thorstenson.
Yes.
Ross.
Aye.
4 aye.
All right. Motion carries. Before I open the floor to public comment, what did Steve want me to do with this?
Just distributor, most important.
Oh, okay. Commissioner, our County Board Commissioner, Steve Carlson was here, and he had some information he wanted me to distribute to the trustees on the Rollins-Savannah Gurnee Trail connection. He's extremely thankful for his partnership with the Village of Gurnee to finally be able to get safe passage across State Road 45 to connect our trails to the Rollins-Savannah. So he couldn't stay tonight, so consider it passed out. All right, we do have an executive session, but I'll open the floor to public comment first. If you state your name for the record, your address is voluntary.
Hi, my name's Diane Surufka. I live in Gurnee. And believe it or not, I'm not going to be talking about ETO. Deep breath. The reason that I called for point of order earlier was because you were talking about an item on the agenda that I had an interest in, and it evidently got passed in, so that means I can't talk about it anymore?
No, you can, yeah. Yeah.
Okay, all right. According to item 3 on the agenda, the last item that you talked about was Toro's multi-pro sprayer, unit 7550. Did I understand correctly that that's been tabled?
No, item number 3 under new business is an equipment lease.
Right.
For the Toro, no, that was just passed.
It just got passed?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Well, the reason I asked about it is because the 31,000 sounded like a lot of money for me for that piece of equipment, so I started doing some research on it. And what I found was that based on the EPA, the latest rating is that it's a tiered 4 by the EPA under the Clean Air Act. And what that's saying is that it's supposed to be reducing harmful emissions in the air, like the particulate matter that we've heard about, all the little dust and stuff in the air. And it's supposed to reduce nitrogen oxide. But that particular piece of equipment does not. So, and what's happening is the diesel fuel, we've talked about that on some other projects in the village, the diesel fuel exhaust from that particular machine is definitely considered a carcinogen, cancer-causing to humans. So I just wanted to point that out. And then the other one was, hang on a second. The sidewalks. That was item 3, consent and agenda. One of the things that I had called the village engineer about last year was on Lawson, the sidewalk, the curb on Lawson wasn't level. And they went through, and the contractor redid Lawson Avenue. And from my understanding, he did such a horrible job for the village, he was cut and in the middle of the contract, not allowed to finish, which was great because there were tie rods and everything in the middle of the concrete. It never even flowed. So ever since then, we've had a lot of problems on Lawson. I say that because I'm the one that goes out 2 o'clock in the morning and cleans all the crap out of the stuff out of the gutter. So I'm questioning whether or not Schroeder and Schroeder is the same company that we had last year.
It's not.
Not? Okay, all right. Will this company come back and fix Lawson then? Because because one of the questions that I wanted them to do, and this was the third-party independent guy, was to take 2 5-gallon buckets of paint and run it down that gutter, that curb, and see where that goes, and see how many times it stops with dead water in that curb. And he kept lining things up with the site and all this stuff. And I said, no, just get the water and run it down, and you're going to see that it doesn't flow. And now there's like 6 different spots between the curve at Dilly's, Burger King, coming down to where Lawson turns to Sunrise at that corner. And the reason that I'm concerned about that is because whatever doesn't stop in that drain comes right down Sunrise, and that's my street. So I'm just bringing it up. That's it. You can check it out. Thank you.
All right, we'll follow up.
Good evening. My name is Yolanta, and I'm a Gurnee resident. So I hope that by now our local Gurnee and Waukegan leaders have realized, and I'm here to talk about ethylene oxide, have realized that the EPA will not step in and conduct air testing, nor will they do anything to help us at this point. Washington is actually currently loosening regulations and not making them stronger to protect us. We cannot rely on the federal, any federal action to address this health grave crisis in our community. The industry-infiltrated EPA leadership is currently weakening standards and eroding the central objective of the Clean Air Act, which is intended to protect public health. There's a bunch of articles recently published in the New York Times and Washington Post talking about how the EPA is loosening standards versus enforcing stronger standards. So at this juncture, our best bet is the state-level legislation, and any regulations that pass via local ordinance are our only hope. So recently, the Senate Bill 1854 and 1852, which I know the village has supported, which we are very thankful, so thank you for filling out those witness slips, those bills have passed through the Senate. They still have to pass through the House and get the governor's signature, but we are very encouraged by the recent legislation. So please continue to support those bills that go through our state legislature. Further, I think there's a House bill that's currently being hashed out. So I know Representative Sam Yingling is proposing some legislation. It's a shell at this moment, but it is going to get filled in. So please continue to support any ETO level legislation at the state level. We would like to mention we're thankful for the Lake County Health Department that is going to conduct independent air testing, hopefully starting in June 1st. That's the goal that we've seen published recently. One of the things that we worry about as citizens is just the adequacy of that testing. So when we look at Willowbrook, there was one facility, you know, they had 10 locations, 10 canisters spread throughout. The EPA did that. So far what we've heard about the testing that's being planned for Lake County Health Department, there's 4 locations with multiple canisters in each location. We're just worried that if the wind for those 10 days where the data is being captured, if that wind blows in a different direction, if it's capturing the air quality levels appropriately. So obviously, as a citizen movement, we're trying to push for a more thorough and with more locations, more canisters throughout both facilities. We'll see if we are successful in that regard. We operate, just so you guys know, we operate on all publicly available information. So what is publicly available is what our group shares to the community. It's not our intent to misinform or share incomplete information. We share what is shared with us, or we share what's published in articles and newspapers, etc. So I just want the village leadership to know that. So for example, like the November 2nd article from Michael Hawthorne, we don't consider that fake news. We don't consider that misinformation. That is publicly available information, and we encourage our citizens to read that article so then they could prod, ask questions, do additional research. As we engage our community members, so for example, this weekend we passed out flyers at the Easter egg hunt. Obviously we're encountering stories and we're encountering impact. So for example, I talked to a lady at the Easter egg hunt this weekend, and she said her mom lives half a mile from Vantage, she has breast cancer. So those stories just continue to keep up. Each person that we reach, we have these stories coming to fruition. So we do recommend an in-depth cancer study within surrounding the 2 facilities around Vantage and Medline. I also wanted to remind our Gurnee leaders that Waukegan is an environmental justice community, and what that means is there is a high population of low-income residents and minorities, so we do want to be aware of that. We're trying to be a voice for Waukegan and Gurnee around this issue, not just our Gurnee residents. We care about all of the residents around these facilities. On April 6th, as you guys know, we hosted our first public awareness rally. We didn't call it a protest because that's not what we're doing. We're not trying to protest or raise a stink about. What we're trying to do is just build awareness in our community. As cars drive by that awareness rally, they see, well, what's going on? What is the issue in our community? And we have reached additional members just by that rally that we had on that Saturday. So it's not our intent to protest anything. We're just trying to raise awareness. We want to make sure that all of our citizens are involved, engaged on this issue, and that we collectively raise our voices to our local legislators and our legislators in the state to make sure that they see the support for this legislation to go through. I did want to inform everyone as well that the Waukegan School Board recently, actually this past Tuesday, passed a resolution in support of this awareness effort, the Stop ETO Lake County. They're supporting independent testing, they're supporting, uniting our voices and taking action around these emissions because they are very toxic. And then I would also like to remind the Gurnee leadership that we are not, the Stop ETO in Lake County movement or group or whatever, advocates, whatever we're labeled, we're not a group. We're not an organized, official organization. We're just a bunch of citizens collectively making sure that the rest of our citizens are aware of the issue in our community. So our goal is really to raise awareness and to make sure that these emissions don't impact somebody's health. And then I would like to conclude by reiterating that these facts. So here are the 5 facts that we know for sure and can't be disputed. Ethylene oxide is a known and scientifically proven cancer and reproductive hazard. There's no question about that. It mutates your DNA. It scrambles it. Fact number 2, Medline and Vantage use ethylene oxide in their production process or sterilization, and they have reported to the EPA that they are emitting it into our air. That is a fact. In significant quantities, might I add. Fact number 3, no amount of a mutanogen is safe to breathe in. It's just a matter of time. If you breathe in large amounts, you get sick quicker. If you breathe in smaller amounts, you get sick, but it's just down the line. And fact number 4, it has been over 5 months since the Lake County found out about ETO emissions. So yes, they are immoral, but technically legal still, and we're trying to push for that legislation to change, so it's not legal. And fact number 5, Gurnee and Waukegan residents are concerned and upset about the health risks posed by these ETO emissions next to our houses and next to our schools. Those are the facts, not misinformation. I think our community and this movement to raise awareness continues to grow. There are more and more citizens joining our group and getting involved. So I just want to encourage you guys to support the independent testing that the Lake County Health Department is putting together and to support the legislation at the state level so we could put this issue behind us and address these emissions. Thank you.
Thank you. And for the record, Andy, I want it to reflect that the EPA has been extremely cooperative and worked with us every step of the way, that the testing we're taking our advice from experts and not citizens. News stories do not always include everything in perspective, all the information or in context. So we would encourage people not to rely on news stories, but to go to our website. I would also say to the Stop ETO leadership, we don't live under a rock, so we don't need a report every week. We keep ourselves very well informed with what's going on, and we stay in contact with our state and federal leadership. And the 5 facts are out of context, so again, I would encourage the board and our citizens to do exactly what they've been doing and go to either our website, the county website, or the EPA website to get the information in the proper context. All right, we're going to go into executive session. Okay. I'm sorry. Thank you.
Name's Eric Sinderman, also Gurnee resident, and I want the record to show that today I'm going to be presenting the board again with a number of FOIA requests, one on my behalf and a second on behalf of my sister, Stacy Davalos. Hers in particular is a 4th request for information regarding a case with the Gurnee Police Department and the willful wanton defiance of both federal law and Illinois compiled statute as for the release of information. I just wanted again to let the record show that we're going to be presenting more documentation to the village board. With some of the information we have now, we're open to whatever, whether it's insubordination by a number of subordinates to the senior members, so be it. But if this is on your behalf, the orders being given, I want to make sure that the village is very aware that the citizens are made aware of what's been going on here. There's been a willful withholding of exculpatory evidence, and case law is very clear both here in the state of Illinois as well as Brady versus Maryland. as well as other statutes, as I mentioned before, that are being violated. So I just
All
wanted
right,
to put-
our Freedom of Information Act officer is here and can take the information from you.
I'm going to be
We don't
passing it to
administer
every
the
member
Freedom
of
of
the board as
Information
well,
Act.
because
All right,
doesn't-
then give it to our attorney.
I am going to give it to
Okay.
Brian as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
At this time, it would be appropriate, oh, you can just give it to me, I'll distribute it.
Yeah, the trustees don't administer the Freedom of Information Act.
So, yeah, if you could just have a seat, we got to conduct our business. At this time, it'd be appropriate for the board to consider a motion to go into executive session. This is under subsection C6 of the Open Meetings Act, and that is to set a price for sale or lease of property owned by the village. We need a roll call vote and motion on that.
All right, do I have a motion to go into executive session? Motion by trustee Balmas. Second. Second by trustee Ross. Roll call, please, Andy.
Balmas.
Aye.
Hood.
Yes.
Thorstenson.
Yes.
Ross.
Aye.
Four aye.
All right, we will be back out. We're not taking any action tonight, right? And we won't be taking any action.